I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie, and I've got, as always, an amazing guest, Andie Monet, and I'll be talking about her in just a second. But before we do, I want you to remember or reintroduce you to our podcast and what it's about. So success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point. And they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. And in each episode, I interview a warrior from all walks of life who are aspiring leaders like entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and they have a vision that goes generations into the future. And today's guest is absolutely no exception. Andie Monet is an awesome warrior. Her warrior journey started as a homeless 16-year-old girl abandoned by her single mom, working hard to build a life as an entrepreneur with the normal struggles of a teenager. Being homeless and starting college at 16 led her to an opportunity to work for a Big Four accounting firm at 20 years old. Consulting in Hollywood at 25, taking on foreign and domestic governments at 28, and her first Fortune 500 client in her 30s created a foundation for her journey today. With several business degrees and 35 years of helping business, Andie has embraced her inner entrepreneur and realized that most of the resources available to start and build a business do more damage than good. So in 2021, she created many short webinars, planners, workbooks, free or small fee trainings, and other resources that will help businesses in every stage and phase of business life. Andie Monet, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. How are things in Houston today?
Great. Thank you for that introduction. I'm excited to be here, and as always, excited to hopefully provide value to some listeners.
Yeah, well, you are definitely going to do that. The warriors who listen to this are all on the journey, and they're going to be as inspired by the challenges you've faced, as well as the things that you're doing today. So, what's it like in Houston? It's a little cloudy here in Dallas today. What's it like there?
It's sunny. And it will be a high of 77 degrees, I think. I check every morning because my son wants to know what to wear.
Yeah, it's interesting because living in Texas, and I didn't always live in Texas, but living in Texas, it could be the high of 50 this time of year, or it could be the high of 100 or 90 or whatever. It could be, you just never know. So yeah,
absolutely.
It's good to check, so you're not either freezing or overdressed. So, well, let's do this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I really am fascinated by your story, and I know the other warriors here will be interested to hear it as well. So let's take a quick break. For the audio audience, we're hear a little bit of our theme song, It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be right back with Andie Monet and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see.
All right, we're back. And Andie, it was great checking in. We didn't have to spend a lot of time because we're in the same state and we're not that far apart, so we don't have a lot to talk about in terms of the difference of the world that we're in today. And I love being in Texas, by the way. I mean, I know you've been on the West Coast, or the left coast, as I call it, and other places in the world. And I tell you, I just love Texas. So wasn't born here. I was born in Kansas City, but I got here as fast as I could. And I've been all over the world, and I'm pretty happy with being here in this state. So anyway, but let's get into your story. I want to hear how you got from where you started. I mean, you kind of gave me some of your story as to how you started your warrior journey, but tell me about that. How did you get from where you started to today?
Yeah, you know what? In all honesty, that journey really started at 5 years old. I know that I was homeless at 16, but I want to tell you this really brief journey what happened when I was 5, which is
Sure.
kindergarten was going to start, and my mother was interviewing ladies to be my nanny. And we went through all of these interviews, and every single one of them, she's like, "Would you like that one?" And I said, "No." And that one, no. And at the end, she was so mad at me, and she was so frustrated. And she's like, "Well, if you're not going to pick a nanny, then you're going to have to do it yourself." And I said, "Fine." so, and she said, "That means that you have to get yourself up in the morning at the right time. You have to get dressed. You have to get your lunch ready. You have to get yourself to school and get home, all the things." And I said, "That's fine. I can do that." And I didn't realize how stubborn I was until I realized later in life this 5-year-old story. And it's so typical of me, because I feel like I've always had this innate, yes, it's stubborn, but also I can be successful. Like, I don't need anybody to help me. And it's good and bad, of course, like with anything. But, from 5 years old to 16 years old, I've had to live my life. And she was a single mother, and I've had to do a lot of things on my own and learn how to cook. And, one time I caught the bus later on, it was in 5th or 6th grade. I had to catch the bus. I caught the wrong one. It got on the freeway. I was in tears. I called my mom and I said, "Hey, I need you to pick me up. I don't know where I am. I need to get to school." And she was like, "Figure it out." And I was so mad. And of course I'm mad and crying at the same time, like, and I'm trudging down the road, and I'm, just this whole experience of trying to figure it out. Right. But as unpleasant as it really was, my whole childhood was geared towards being mentally strong. Mm-hmm. And making decisions and knowing that I can do it on my own. And even though now, leading up to 16 years old, she abandoned me, and I was homeless literally overnight. And it was emotionally traumatizing, and the things that come with that for obvious reasons. But at that point, when I was 16 years old, not only did I already have some mental resources to get through that, but I also realized literally that day, that I realized two things. One, again, I was responsible, but now more conscientious, more conscious. I was responsible for my own success, whatever that looked like. Mm-hmm. And two, what action did I need to take today to get towards that goal? And at 16, being homeless, the goal was, where do I sleep? And that's a really small goal, but that really small goal honestly affected the entire rest of my life. And it wasn't really an epiphany. It was more, I got to do this. What do I need to go forward? Like, it doesn't matter if I was scared or tired or frustrated or, whatever those fears that come up that prevent people from doing things. Yes, I had them, but they were second, because the priority was, okay, let me take that one next step. Let me take that one small action. Let me take that one small, looking for a place to live, making a phone call. At that time, we didn't have internet or Google. So literally everything I learned was from the library. And after figuring out where to live, literally the next step was, okay, I know I want to graduate, not leave, graduate from high school formally start college. And it was like Google in person, going to the library. And how do I do that? And that took time to figure out. And I was determined. And it it's weird because I never ever thought it was not going to happen. Whether I'm naive or whether I'm stubborn or whether I'm focused or whatever that is, it never occurred to me that that would never happen. It was just a matter of time that I would get the answer that I needed. And it did take time. And part of that journey was really fighting and clawing my way to get what I needed. I mean, even regardless of the business, which we'll talk about, but I registered to formally graduate high school, and I got sent into the principal's office, and he said, "You can't do that, and I'm going to call your mom." I said, "Fine, you can't stop me." I mean, I was that kid who, I don't want to say I was a troublemaker, but I wasn't a troublemaker in the negative sense. I was a troublemaker in the sense of, I know you can't stop me from doing something that I know is good for me. Mm-hmm. So why would you want me to stay in high school being homeless, literally, instead of being successful and graduating from high school? So I had that battle. Then I had the battle of all my teachers. And then I also had to beg and ask and plead. I'm like, hey, college starts literally the week of high school finals. So can you change my finals date? Like, what in the world? And I said, but this is the situation. And all of them said yes, except one, which eventually said yes. But like these little action steps, right? And really defending myself and being committed and explaining, learning how to, I don't mean learning how to get what you want in a manipulative way, but learning what you want to get in a productive, efficient way, right? So all of those things I learned in a very short period of time. I mean, even again, getting into college, okay, well, what does that look like? What do I do? How do I apply? What information do I need to give you? And after that whole journey and getting accepted into college, the financial aid people denied my financial aid application, which did not make any sense to me. So I went there and I said, what's going on? And they said, well, we got your financial aid application, but there's no way you could possibly be living on this income. So you have to get the person who's caring for you, I have to get their tax information. And even though I explained it to them and I appealed it, they still denied it. So now I had to find out how to pay for college after I'd already started. So all of these things literally within a few months.
Wow. That the thing that really strikes me here, and I so love, I'm glad you went back to 5 and then talked about this, because really, no, I mean, there's so many parallels, so many things in my own journey. I look at, in contrast, I mean, you and I, we're not exactly the same vintage, but we've kind of weathered some of the things. I came from a very low income or a low income background. I didn't have the resources, that my mom said, or my parents said, we can't afford to buy the clothes you want. You have to buy what we can afford. And I said, okay, well, then I'll start my own business. And I did that at 10, and I started mowing grass and did that. And then that became the foundation for the same things you're talking about, not quite as dramatic as some of the things you're talking about, but you learned, it's called the refractory period. And if you can do anything for your children, which I didn't know when I was raising my 5 kids, by the way. So as we've experienced with a lot of the younger generation, whether they're millennials or Gen Zs or whatever, is they haven't experienced, that's what we experienced in COVID, right? They haven't experienced the things that we've experienced and gone through that we had to overcome. So that overcoming, even at the age of 5, and even some of the things were foundational, as we talk about the ups and downs, wins and losses. They were foundational to getting you to a place where then when you had to learn all the things you learned in a several month period of time, that you weren't totally overwhelmed by those things, and you just had to parse them down. And I love the fact that you said, okay, because I work with clients and I work with my own kids and I work with other people right now. And I say, look, the thing you got to do right now is learn to pay the rent. The thing you got to do right now is figure out where you're going to live. All those things, but that's not what I really want to do. That's not my vision, and I'm the vision warrior. I like working with people on a vision, but you have to pave the runway. You have to get things and do things. And so you, in your little story there, and just the way you did it, you illustrated all of that so beautifully. So I love, love, love that. So you got through school, you're now in, and you're going through some of this stuff. So pick up your story there and tell me a little bit more about that, because it's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, when I was 16 and I was doing all of this and finding a place to live and getting into college and going through college, nobody wants to hire a 16-year-old either, which is obvious. It's kind of obvious, but and if you do, I'm sorry, there's so much in my mind. I'm trying to stay focused now. I'm sorry, but
okay.
So when you're 16, you are allowed to work, but you need a worker's permit, I think it was called. But a parent or guardian has to sign it, which I didn't have, right? So in this whole troubleshooting my life, I had to find a way to earn money, and I didn't know it at the time. I wasn't like, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Hey, I'm going to own my own business and I'm going to be a rock star. It was more like, hey, I need to eat. Right. Hey, I need to find a place to live. I need, I need to pay for college somehow. And so that really was literally door to door, going to different businesses saying, hey, what do you need? And learning. I mean, it was really humbling and mortifying and terrifying and tough on the ego, and I'm already homeless. They like all these emotions, right? But I know I needed to knock on doors, period. Like all the other stuff came second. And okay, well, what are you going to do? Well, I can do stapling, I can do phone answering, I can do copying, so I'd have to tell them what I could do. And then there's, and I know this is a really small thing, but even making eye contact, right? You're talking about a 16-year-old homeless girl who's already an introvert. So learning how to not stare at my own feet was one of the challenges that I realized I had to learn. And all of this really was trial and error. After 100 no's, what can I do differently? What could I have said differently? What could I have, stood differently? And, I didn't have the option of wearing different types of clothes. I didn't have a lot of those. So what needed to happen? What did I need to say or do or feel or whatever to make somebody say yes? And eventually my first set of yeses was really saying, I hear you saying no, but I promise you I can do more than you could ever imagine. I'll do, one full day for free to show you that I'm a rock star. I mean, I say rock star at the time, but
Sure.
that I really am valuable, but you don't know that because you haven't tried me out yet. So just give me a try. It's free and you can decide. So there's a lot of free hours in there. But after that, 80% of the people said yes. I mean, literally, if I knocked on 10 people's doors, eight people or 9 people would say yes. And I would have work for that day. And that's really where it started. And oversimplifying that, you're learning how to sell, right? And no one likes that word. I don't even like that word, but it's necessary, right? I mean, one of the things that I talk about with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially women in particular, is that find the salesperson in you, right? And it doesn't have to be, I think it's really scary for the average person because the traditional thought about salespeople is that it's manipulative, or they don't listen, or they're giving you something you don't need. And yes, there are people like that, but there's that in any industry, even attorneys, mechanics, accountants, whatever. It's not just it exists because people exist, right? But how do you really find what I change it from being a salesperson to be able to add value to people's lives? What is it that you can do in your business that helps them sleep, less stress, get more work done, work less hours, whatever it is? There's always something that you can do to add value. And if you don't know what your business does to add that value, it's so much harder to get business. It's not about you. The first step is never about you. It doesn't matter that I have 5 degrees, I speak 6 languages, I've helped the federal government, I've been in business for 35 years. Nobody cares, right? Unless I say, hey, let's fix your problem. Or maybe I just share a problem you don't really know you have until I share what that looks like to you. So part of being a quote salesperson is adding value and educating people. Your job is to educate people on how you can solve problems, not you specifically, but how to solve their problem with what you might have, right? But because I already knew that pretty much anything I wanted to do, I could do in the sense of being capable, I was like, why not call up the CFO of Price Waterhouse? Why not call the CFO of Monster Beverage, although they didn't exist yet, but I did do that recently. Why the worst they can say is no, right? And then you just have practice. And I heard this one mental toughness coach who I just heard him one time, but I never forgot. He's like, you want to hear no. And I thought, no, I don't. He said, no, you want to hear no, and you want to hear 300 no's, because once you get past 300 no's, you're like, you already know what to say. Like, there's nothing that really is going to surprise you. You know what your value is. You know what your response is. The fear or of rejection or whatever other fears go around the hearing no, it's pretty much just like, okay, whatever, right? And that was really valuable, although I didn't know that guy until the last 10 years. But what I realized then when I was younger was kind of the same thing, but I didn't know it. I didn't realize that all the no's I got were helping me figure out how to form a yes. Right. And that in part, of course, had to do with sales, but there's other parts too. And one of the things that I've just innately really good at, which helps, is efficiency. So like, and this is an oversimplified example, but this is just how I think. So I have to, at 16 years old, and I'm making copies and I'm collating and I'm putting together and I'm stapling them. So I would put them all in my 5 fingers and I would staple 5 at a time instead of, picking up one and stapling it and putting it down and picking up one and stapling it and putting it down. I could pick up 5 and do 5 at a time. And that's just how my mind works. How do I do this faster? How do I do it more efficiently? Because to me, that really was an integrity issue to say, I don't care if I'm scrubbing toilets, doing staples, or helping you manage a multi-billion-dollar company. I am going to kick ass at what I do. And that was the efficiency part is one of those steps to me in my mind, right?
Sure.
So then that just led to all of the other successes that came along.
So we're going to kind of, we have a common bond or whatever in working with large consulting firms or the corporate world. You navigated through that, had a degree of success. Tell me about your story getting from there through that to today, just a little bit of that, because I think that would be helpful, because I have a lot of people, a lot of warriors who are not starting. I have some that are millennials that are getting started, and they need to learn some of the lessons that you've already illustrated in your story. But then the second part of this is you've taken that, you made it into your corporate success, had some impact there. And now you're in a place where you're kind of circling back to now you want to empower entrepreneurs. And we're not going to get into that because we'll take a break before that. But tell me how you kind of navigated to that and what kinds of things you encountered there.
With corporate, you mean? Mm-hmm. In general, or specifically challenges, or?
Yeah, just the things that as you navigated through that and then got to a place where you are today, what brought you to that through your corporate experience?
Really, one of the pieces I think is it's indirectly related. And I think it's one of the things I talk to entrepreneurs about is communication. And that's such a not sexy term, right? It's like, but I bring it up specifically because if you're talking, whether you own a business or you're working for a business or you're going to be interviewed, whatever your situation, it's going to be different with a small business than than Fortune 500, corporation, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was my natural language was, I want I want the punchline first. I'll ask you questions if I need questions and if I have questions. And so that really worked well with with CEOs and executives. And I'm like, and I literally walked into, I had a project with Monster Beverage for one thing, and I noticed some things. And I walked into the CFO's office and I handed him a proposal, and he's like, "Who are you? And why are you even in my office?" Because I didn't know him. And I said, "Hey, I'm working in this division, and this is what I noticed, and here's my proposal," fully knowing that he's going to say WTF, right? And he's like, "Okay, well, again, why are you here?" And I said, "Listen, do you want to make $15 million a month more $15 million more per month for the next 5 years in your bank account?" Not his, obviously, but the company's. "Well, yeah, that's a stupid question." And I said, "But would you pay $100,000 to get 15 million a month for the next 5 years?" "That's a stupid question too." And I said, "Sign there and tell me when I'm going to meet you." Literally, that was our conversation. And I bring that up only because they want to know what value you're bringing, and they want to know the finances. And I just answered both in less than 5 minutes, got the appointment, got him to sign it. He was like, "I don't know who you are. I'm signing the document. We'll figure it out later." So how you communicate with people in the way that they want to hear it is a part of that success, right? And you're not going to do that with a small business because it's personal. It's their personal money. It's their personal goal, whether or not they're going to eat at Outback Steakhouse or Taco Bell tonight, right? Sometimes. So how the way that you present your value to people is different depending on what size company. I did not realize that early on. I just happen to be more successful at it with Fortune 500 companies because that's the language that I just normally communicated in. So I don't know if that's the answer to your question, but it was valuable to me, so I wanted to share it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you shared it because, again, that's part of this. This is your warrior journey, and I knew you had some value to offer there, and that is important. I mean, it is coming from the corporate world to dealing with entrepreneurs, dealing with small business owners. There's this thing, I did a talk called The Miracle of Margin. And the thing is, when you're, as you said, when you're working with your money, your ability to eat, pay the bills, not be homeless or be home, I mean, the fears are are closer and more real to sometimes than it is when you've got this cocoon around you in the corporate world where, hey, I'm a little cog in the machine. Even if you're a partner at a big firm, it doesn't matter. You're still, you're kind of protected. But when we'll talk about when we get into what you're doing today, that's very clear, is getting from that to this. Most of the fundamentals, by the way, and this is one of the things that I teach, and I would assume you would agree, the fundamentals are the same. It's just that the experience and the abilities and limitations. There's good things about entrepreneurs. You don't have to go through the bureaucracy of decision making, because I could work with a CEO and they could make a decision, and then it's hard to imagine, but a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company and some clerk in some little place that didn't go along with it could derail the deal or could derail that CEO's vision of where he wants to take the company, which just blows you away. And it's too much like work, so I don't do that anymore. But the thing is, so that's brilliant. Well, let's do this. I can tell already there's so many things of alignment and there's so much in your journey, and I'm so fascinated by it. But let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and I want to come back and I really want to kind of hear about why you're doing what you're doing today and the unique value that you see yourself providing, and then what kind of impact or what's your ideal day look like when we go from there. All right, so let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth
All right, for the audio audience, I hope you enjoyed a little bit more of Ricky Jean Wright and the theme song, but we're back. And Andie, I already knew we were very aligned. There was a lot of synergy and excitement between us, and you've proven that over. So I know that the Warriors listening are enjoying this. So tell me about why you're doing what you're doing today. I mean, you've had a lot of success. You've gone, overcome a lot of zombies along the road. But why are you doing what you're doing today? And what's the unique value that you see yourself providing? I can see a lot of that, by the way, without even asking, but I wanted you to share your perspective.
Yeah, of course. I knew as early as I could remember that I wanted to change the world. And it's kind of a naive thought, but I didn't know if I was going to, bring world peace or solve world hunger. Like, these are the levels that I'm thinking of as a child, right? And I've never forgotten that. And so with the entrepreneur thing is, okay, well, yeah, I do. I have corporate clients. I have a few small businesses here and there as clients before, but I really, the reason, and then I was actually consulting with foreign governments specifically to help their economies improve so that the citizens can live a more healthy, financially healthy, better quality of life, not being, making 5 cents a day or whatever it is. I mean, that literally was why I ended up consulting with foreign governments. And that is a whole nother discussion. But I realized that why don't I make a difference here, right? In the United States, where I live, or where I was born, where I'm a citizen, where my family is, where, and I really started taking a lot of time looking at entrepreneurs, and well, not specifically entrepreneurs, but more specifically small business owners, and I think that anybody in business more than a few years has heard the statistics that one out of every 5 businesses goes bankrupt within a year or two, or whatever that horrific statistic was. And why? Right? That's my question myself, is why are they going out of business? And then I started gearing my business towards them and realizing that there's some really key elements of running a small business that is not common knowledge. I mean, it's common to me because I've been in it for 35 years, but things I had to learn that they don't yet know, that some people just don't know for whatever reason, whether it's financial or operational or strategy or building revenue or whatever. And it really hit home for me because when I reflected on myself, and I didn't realize this until a couple of years ago, actually, is one of the reasons I do what I do is because I don't want somebody to have to go through the same crap that I did. I know what that's like, obviously. I know how hard it was. I know the feeling of not having support, whether emotionally or financially or advisory. I know the fears of not knowing what to do tomorrow, or when is somebody going to say yes, or when am I going to not eat tomorrow? Like, all of those are real questions. And a lot of startups especially don't know don't have answers for those. And how can I make a difference in those people's lives? And it's such a near and dear place for me because it's personal, right? But in addition to that, there's this whole nother thing about moving people from I'm a small business owner to I am a kick-ass corporate executive in my own company. I have confidence. I know how to make business decisions. I know what to do tomorrow. I know if a challenge comes up, how can I attack it? How do I build my business up without losing money or taking a loan when I don't need it? Or when do I hire a new person with growth? Like, all of those things, I want people to really be empowered. And so, yes, I'm good at what I do, but I don't do it because I'm good at it. I do it because I know I can make a difference in somebody's life. And that is way more important to me than anything else. And it's a place where I know that there's people that I'm helping that I'll never know that I helped, whether they hear a podcast or read my book or download a workbook or whatever. But I know that in my heart, I'm helping people. And that just really warms my heart. And I'm going to say this, which is really unusual, and I don't care, which is the place that I come from is really loving on people. How can I love on people? How can I love people? How can I really just embrace humanity directly and indirectly, and really just be there for them, right? And that's so important to me. In part, yes, my journey financially, but in part also because again, loving wise, like my mother was just never there. My dad wasn't there. And so there's this whole another aspect, which is probably not a time for this podcast, but the things that were missing in my life that I want to also give to my clients and to the public at large. And and that's a journey of itself. So even though I do very specific strategic training and consulting in my business, these people are also my friends. Like I tell my clients I love them, and some of them are uncomfortable, and I'm like, yeah, well, I don't care. I mean, I love you in that way, right? And I want you to know that I'm here. I mean, I've been to so many children's recitals and athletic events, and prevented some divorces from happening. Like people are more than just a business owner. They're people, right? They're people, and they have lives, and they have priorities, and they have dreams, and they have goals. And that's why I love doing what I do. But I also want to bring up a different point, which just because I'm super geeky, and so I'm going to bring it up, is so when I first started college, I was actually a physics and engineering major, and the engineering was about design with given certain constraints and objectives, and then the physics was how things work, how life works, how energy works, how biology works, just how things work, right? And then you add a ton of math to that, which I love math, and I'm sorry to say, and I had a coach that said, do not ever say math ever in public. I'm like, math, and so it says it scares people, and it probably does, but I'm bringing it up because, give me 2 sentences to geek out here, but when you have multiple formulas with multiple variables and multiple with only one objective, that's what optimization is mathematically. So you 20 or 30 or 40 formulas, okay, well, how do we increase revenue? Well, you want to maximize revenue, right? And how do you minimize costs? So those are competing objectives, and those are 2 different formulas. And how do you bring them together to create an optimal solution for your business? And I'll multiply that times 40 or 50, considering operations, how many people you have, what industry you're in, the mindset, the leadership, the background, all of those things, both quantitatively, qualitatively, and indirect. And that's why I am one of the very few people that I know that can take that puzzle with those variables and make what I say is make explosive profits happen and increase your revenue or profits by up to 300% in as little as 1 to 2 months, because I take all of that stuff. So
yeah, it's so, and I know, having you have done, and by the way, if anybody's listening to this and hadn't participated in the mastermind that we did last Friday, I guess it was, I would encourage you to go to the YouTube channel and look at that. But the thing is, I love it because I actually have an engineering and a business degree, several business degrees, and with Wharton, Indiana University, Thunderbird, different places, right? And the thing is, I'm kind of geek on that too. I will say that the math part of it is a means to an end, but I love the fact that you understand that multivariate thing that's going on, that was kind of how I did large multi-billion-dollar deals, right? You can't find the answer, but I could somehow see it because I could connect those dots. So we have a lot of alignment there. And I so love the fact that you also said, and notice I've used the word love several times already, is because I'm a Christian, by the way, and the only thing I have is 2 commandments. One is to love God, and the other is to love you. So I don't have, I don't have to like you. I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to respect or trust or anything else, but I do have to love you. And so saying you love your clients or saying you love the people that are brought into your path, to me, is kind of a command. We're supposed to do that. So that's not uncomfortable to me, and shouldn't be uncomfortable to any warrior listening to that, because that's the kind of people you want to encounter on your journey, is people who are at least fundamentally aligned with the fact that they care about you as a human being and they want to see you succeed. Well, let's do this. There's so much that we've covered. There's so many things that you shared that have my mind spinning. But what I want to do is take a quick break. I want to come back and I want you to share with the audience, if we take away anything from this that maybe you haven't emphasized, or maybe you have, what will we take away, and then how do we stay in touch? So let's take another quick break. We'll hear a little more Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be back with Andie Monet and Warrior versus Zombie.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God, on down the road we go.
Man. My brain is just going in so many directions, Andie, and so I can imagine somebody listening to this podcast. There's so much. And go back and listen. The beauty of a podcast is you can rewind and go back and listen to it. You can listen to it 1.5 times or whatever, on speed, so you can get past things that you want. But anyway, so if we take away anything from this podcast, what would you want us to make sure we take away?
I personally feel that anything in life, business, personal, relationship, children, parenting, school, whatever, the one key thing that I think is really important is to take action. It does not have to be big. And I think that's where a lot of people really skip up is, well, if I'm not going to take a big action, then it's not going to be a useful action. And I would completely disagree with that. Yes, big action's great, right? But there are so many small actions that can be done. And so an example is, write something down on a sticky note, write an affirmation down and put it on your bathroom mirror, send an email, make a phone call, do a 5-minute Google search. There's always little steps that create a bigger journey. And I really love Asian proverbs, but one of them is every big journey starts with a single step. And that single step does not have to be big, right? I mean, I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to, if you want something, take one small action every day. And that really has been one of the biggest successes, or one of the biggest things that's led to my success is, okay, well, I know where I want, how do I get there? And sometimes it's messy, right? Sometimes your actions are mistakes. Yes, it's possible. But even if when that happens, it still gets you closer because you're like, oh, well, that wasn't one of the steps, right? So let's redirect. But everything is always better than not doing anything at all. And I heard this one quote or analogy, which I like, and it's a little bit long, but I think you guys will get it, which is if you walk out of your door and you go into your car and you turn it on, and you're facing north, how do you start going south? And the answer is you have to be driving. Mm-hmm. You have to be moving to change direction. And it sounds really silly, but I think it's an important metaphor to understand, because you can't sit still in your business or whatever, improving your relationships, being a better parent, going to church more often, right? Whatever it is, you can't change direction until you're physically moving. And that's really important, I think, for people to understand. Like, a direction, wrong or right, is better than no direction.
You know what? I can't think of a more powerful takeaway than that. And I often say, it's kind of funny that you use that analogy or that illustration, because I say you can't steer a parked car. The point is, what you say is that even if you take an action that's in the 180 degrees out of direction from where you want to go, if you are moving, you can turn around. If you're sitting in your head, and that's the problem with a lot of my clients, a lot of my friends, people that you want to help, right? Is we're in our head, we're thinking. Today, especially, there's so much information. We're so overwhelmed. There's so many things we can do. There's so many people telling us to do this, to do that, to whatever, that our zombie mind is sitting there taking all this in. And guess what our zombie mind is there for? To keep us alive. And so we take all that in and we become paralyzed with, okay, do I do this? Do I do that? How big do I go? How small do I go? And the thing that you said is so powerful, yet so simple, is it's a journey every day. It's not the getting there. It's not the vision. And so real warriors listening to this podcast, by the way, anybody listening to this podcast will know that it's a journey every day, and the things that come into our path, the challenges that you experience, the homelessness, the getting the degrees, the working through it, even today, going from corporate to entrepreneur and trying to translate that. It's all just on the way. It's not in the way, because we're just, you may drive the car around it. We may have to take a U-turn, whatever we have to do. It's so brilliant, but yet so simple. So I love it, and I love you, and I know that we're going to have, there's going to be more down the path on our journey, but how do we stay in touch with you, Andie?
Yeah, the best place to start is on my website, because it links to everything, which is andiemonet.com. But there's free downloads there. My social media is there. If you like motivation, I encourage everybody to go to my Instagram, because that's where, on my personal Instagram, I only post motivation and funny stuff, especially about myself. Business stuff is business, and it's a different one, but I love motivation because you can never get too much of it.
Well, that's great. And the thing is, if you're watching this in replay on the Be Connected platform, I don't know how prevalent you are, but we're going to make sure you get prevalent on that platform so that people can intentionally connect to you. It's a very intentional.
I love Be Connected.
It's a very intentional community. I don't like the noise that occurs in some of the platforms these days and the control. And we can do what we're doing here, point to point, warrior to warrior, make things happen. And so I so love that. And so, but andiemonet.com is your website, correct? Yeah.
Yes,
so
sir.
We'll make sure we reach out to her there. There's a lot of resources. I've already pinged into that. I'll post in the YouTube channel and on the description a link to her website. And thank you, Andie. Thank you for sharing with our audience. I know we may have gone a little long here, but it was well worth it. So hang with us. Watch, like I say, listen to the podcast on 1.5 speed, so that you get through my stuff and really get to hear what Andie has to say. So with that, we're gonna land the plane here. Again, Andie, thank you.
Of course, I love talking to you, and I love being here, and I love really adding things to people's lives. So hopefully I was able to do that.
You've absolutely made a difference. I'm going to listen to this one periodically, and I'm going to tell all my clients to be sure and listen to this one, because I think you're going to have an impact. So with that, let's land the plane here. We'll be back next Thursday for another episode of Warrior versus Zombie at 11 a.m. Central. And thank you, Andie, for sharing with us today. And we'll hear the final outro of Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be back next week.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know.